Cathars. Historians use the term medieval Inquisition to describe the various inquisitions that started around 1184, which responded to large popular movements throughout Europe that were considered heretical, in particular the Cathars in southern France and the related movement of the Waldensians in both southern France and northern Italy. The Cathars had established communities in northern Italy, the Alpine regions. The Cathars were sometimes known as Albigensians, after the city Albi in southern France where the movement first took hold. According to Malcolm Lambert, that there was a substantial transmission of ritual and ideas from Bogomilism to Catharism is beyond reasonable doubt. 12. Their doctrines have numerous resemblances to those of the Bogomils and the Polychians, who influenced them. 13. The idea of two gods or principles, one good and the other evil, was central to Cathar beliefs. They believed the evil god was the God of the Old Testament, creator of the physical world, whom many Cathars identified as Satan. Cathars believed human spirits were the sexless spirits of angels trapped in the material realm of the evil god, destined to be reincarnated until they achieved salvation through the consolamentum, a form of baptism performed when death is imminent, by which Cathar individuals were raised to the status of perfect. 14. Though to most scholars the origins of the Cathars remain unclear, the likely provenance of their Gnostic ideas was also the Kabbalah, as both movements emerged simultaneously in the very same region, the Languedoc in southern France. The Languedoc, the Judea of France as it has been called, is a former province of France, whose territory is now contained in the modern-day region of Occitanie in the south of France. 15. Its capital city was Toulouse. The tolerance and favor accorded to the Jews was one of the main complaints of the Catholic Church against the Counts of Toulouse. The position of the Jews in the territories of the Counts of Toulouse was accompanied by the prosperity enjoyed among southern French Jews, whose political and economic status compared favorably to that of Jews in other parts of Europe. Important and powerful Jewish communities flourished in Saint-Gilles, Toulouse, Verdun, Nîmes, Lunel, and Pasquières. Saint-Gilles even hosted a rabbinical school. As noted by John O'Brien, it is clear, however, that the greater economic, political and intellectual freedom enjoyed by the Jews of Languedoc resulted in a freer exchange of ideas between the Jews and Gentiles than elsewhere. 16. That interaction resulted in the proliferation of the heretical Cathar sect. As Skolem has pointed out, the Cathars agree with the Kabbalists on a number of points, but the question of a possible link between the crystallization of the Kabbalah, as we find it in the redaction of the Sefer HaBa'er, and the Cathar movement must also remain unresolved, at least for the present. This connection is not demonstrable, but the possibility cannot be excluded. 17. In Jewish influence on Christian reform movements, Louis I Newman concludes that the powerful Jewish culture in Languedoc, which had acquired sufficient strength to assume an aggressive, propagandist policy, created a milieu wherefrom movements of religious independence arose readily and spontaneously. Contact and association between Christian princes and their Jewish officials and friends stimulated the state of mind which facilitated the banishment of orthodoxy, the clearing away of the debris of Catholic theology. Unwilling to receive Jewish thought, the princes and laity turned towards Catharism, then being preached in their domains. 18. A landmark in the organization of the Cathars was the Council of St. Felix, held at St. Felix de Caraman, now called St. Felix Lauragais, in 1167. The senior figure, who apparently presided and gave the consolamentum to the assembled Cathar bishops, was Papa Nistus, Bogomil Bishop of Constantinople. In the 1160s, before arriving in the Languedoc, Nistus went to Lombardy to reinforce the dualist beliefs of the Cathars of these regions, and, in particular, to throw doubt on the validity of their spiritual lineage or ordo, the sequence of consolamenta by which they were linked to the apostles. Mark, who then presided over the Cathars of Lombardy, received the consolamentum from Nistus. In 1167, in the presence of Mark and other representatives of Cathar churches in Languedoc, France, and Catalonia, Nistus presided over the Council of St. Felix, at which he renewed the consolamenta and confirmed the episcopal office of 6 Cathar bishops. 19 among them was Bernard Raymond, who according to Geoffrey of Auxerre confessed under inquisitorial pressure to having practiced sexual liberty and infanticide. 20. A common name for the Cathars was Bugger, a corruption of Bulgar, a reference to the Bogo Mills, which eventually gave English bugger for sodomy. 21. To the Cathars, since the soul is the divine part of man, it must be freed from evil matter to enter the kingdom of light. On this basis, they rejected marriage, forbade the eating of meat, demanded complete chastity, and denied the resurrection. Virginity and chastity for Cathars was associated with their spiritual interpretation of marriage. More specifically, Cathar doctrine held intermarital sex in lower esteem than extramarital sex. However, according to Peter of Vox Discerni, a historian of the crusade against the Cathars, who wrote between 1212 to 1220, the Cathars falsely claimed to keep themselves chaste. 22. As further explained by Adhemar of Chabannes, who wrote at the beginning of the 11th century. Manicheans appeared throughout Aquitaine leading people astray. They denied baptism and the cross and every sound doctrine. They abstained from food and seemed like monks, they pretended chastity, but among themselves they practiced every debauchery. 23. Durand of Huesca, an ex-Waldensian and avowed opponent of the Cathars, wrote after returning to Orthodox Christianity. For God himself, they say, has two wives, Colum and Colibam, and from them he begot sons and daughters in the manner of humans. On the basis of this belief, some of them believe there is no sin in men and women kissing and embracing each other and even having intercourse, if it should be known, nor can one sin in doing so for payment. 24. The Church charged the Cathars with devil worship, human sacrifice, cannibalism, incest, homosexuality, and celebrating the Black Mass. Walter Mapp, in his De Nugis Curialium, described the Publicani, a sect similar to the Cathars who had sent missionaries from Germany to England, as worshipping Satan in rituals involving the obscene kiss, very similar to the Sabbaths later attributed to the witches. About the first watch of the night, each family sits waiting in silence in each of their synagogues, and there descends by a rope which hangs in their midst a black cat of wondrous size. On sight of it they put out the lights and do not sing or distinctly repeat hymns, but hum them with closed teeth, and draw near to the place where they saw their master, feeling after him, and when they have found him they kiss him. The hotter the feelings the lower their aim, some go for his feet, but most for his tail and privy parts. Then as though this noisome contact unleashed their appetites, each lays hold of his neighbor and takes his fill of him or her for all he is worth. 25. Paul of Chartres, Guibert of Nogent, and Geoffrey of Auxerre accused the Cathars of performing human sacrifice of children. According to Paul of Chartres, when a child was born of this most filthy union/sexual intercourse during a religious rite, on the 8th day thereafter a great fire was lighted, the child was purified by the fire in the manner of the old pagans, and so was cremated. Its ashes were collected and preserved with as great veneration as Christian reverence is wont to guard the body of Christ. 26. The Paul of Chartres account includes the appearances by a demon in the likeness of a small beast during the ceremony. Among the numerous accusations of sexual indiscretion among the perfects, the only ones describing ritual intercourse are made by Paul of Chartres and Guibert of Nogent, according to whom they hold meetings in cellars and secret places, the sexes mingling freely, who when candles have been lighted, in the sight of all, fair women with bare buttocks, it is said, offer themselves to one lying behind them. The candles are extinguished and immediately they all cry out together chaos, and each one lies with her who comes to hand. 27. In 1150, Geoffrey of Auxerre wrote that the Cathars taught free sex. The Council of Reims of 1157 accused them of sex orgies. Caesarius of Heisterbach described the Cathars as holding nocturnal meetings in Verona that included orgies. Peter of Vox Discerni, a Cistercian monk, wrote in his Historia Albigensis, c. 1213-1218, that the Cathars were the limbs of the Antichrist, the firstborn of Satan, and that they claimed that the Perfect argued that no one could sin from the waist down. In his disputation between a Catholic and a Potawatomi heretic, c. 1240, George Florence accused them of preferring sodomitic vice or the copulation with men.